This is my abandoned farm, which I bought with all the money I had. At the beginning, I have nothing but my pickup truck and whatever the previous owners left behind. With this, I must restore this overgrown mess and turn it into a profitable farm. If that sounds interesting to you, leave a like and let's get started. When I arrived, I was shocked by the state of everything. The entire property was completely overgrown with tall grass and several wild trees sprouting everywhere. I barely made it through with my pickup truck. What greeted me was this jungle of vegetation, an old farmhouse, a weathered shed, and what looked like a garage hidden behind the overgrowth. The house was in rough shape but still standing. Inside the shed there wasn't much, just some empty spaces and cobwebs, and this tree. But when I opened the garage door, I couldn't believe what I found. There was a manual lawnmower covered in dust but still intact. Next to it, a rusty shovel leaned against the wall. And in the corner, a chainsaw that looked like it hadn't been used in years. But the real treasure was an old trailer, sitting there like it was waiting for me. It was worn and weathered, but the frame looked solid. Well, enough exploring. Time to get to work. The first thing I needed to do was clear this overgrown mess. I grabbed the manual mower and started cutting a path through the grass. It was backbreaking work, pushing that old mower through grass that came up to my waist. But slowly, I began to make progress. And after 1 hour, first grass is cutted. The chainsaw was my next tool. I fired it up and started cutting down the bushes and the trees that were blocking access to the buildings. Each tree that fell opened up more space and made the place look less like a wilderness. Now, I needed to make some money from this cleanup. I can sell all wood! So I cut the fallen trees into manageable logs and loaded them into my pickup truck. I drove to the local sawmill with my first load of wood. The sawmill owner was happy to take the logs off my hands. For that first load, I earned $480. Not a fortune, but it was my first income from this abandoned farm, especially since I have one more large tree left. I got a whopping $3,000 for all the wood. Very cool. On my way back to the farm, disaster struck. I felt the pickup truck pulling to one side, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a flat tire. I pulled over and saw that the wheel had been punctured by a sharp stone on the rough road. Luckily, I had a spare tire in the back. It took me 20 minutes to change it, but I was back on the road. Back at the farm, I continued clearing the grass with the manual mower. After several hours of work, I had opened up most of the area around the buildings. The place was finally starting to look like a farm instead of an abandoned jungle. That's when I made another discovery. Behind the garage, I found an ancient tractor. It was covered in years of dust and grime, but it was a real tractor. My heart raced with excitement. If I could get this thing running, it would change everything. I tried to start it, but nothing happened. The engine wouldn't even turn over. I popped the hood and immediately saw the problem. The battery died and the fuel filter was completely clogged. Years of sitting had caused the fuel lines to become blocked with old, gummy fuel. I grabbed my pickup truck keys and headed to the nearest repair shop. I needed a new battery, new fuel filter, and some fresh fuel to flush the system. The parts cost me $350, but it was an investment in getting that tractor working. Now let's back to the farm. Back at the farm, I spent the afternoon cleaning out the fuel system and installing the new battery and new filter. I filled the tank with fresh fuel and said a little prayer. I turned the key and the engine coughed to life. It ran rough at first, but after a few minutes, it settled into a steady rhythm. I had a working tractor. With my newly restored tractor, I was ready to take on bigger jobs. I checked the local internet board and found a simple cultivation contract for a neighboring farm. They needed someone to work their field, and they were willing to pay $3,000. I accepted the job immediately. I drove the old tractor slowly to their farm. The machine handled well despite its age. They give me their cultivator. I attached it and start working. I spent the day cultivating their field, learning how to operate the controls and getting a feel for farm work. When the job was finished, the farmer was satisfied with my work. He handed me $3,000 in cash, my first real farming income. With money in my pocket, I decided it was time to rent some proper equipment. I found a mower attachment that would fit my tractor for $400. This would make clearing the grass much faster and easier. But why do I need it? I'll show you now. There are 2 fields near my farm that also belong to it. The first one is with the old crop, we'll come back to it later. And the second one is with grass. That's exactly what I want to mow. Looking at all that grass, I realized I had another opportunity. I could collect it and sell it for animal feed. So let's get to work. How cool is it to mow the grass with a tractor instead of by hand? I've struggled in the yard with a manual mower, but now I won't have to struggle again. To start, I mow a small section. For collection job, I'll need a shovel and a trailer. So I hitch up the trailer, I grab the shovel, and I'm off to the field. And I started loading the grass into the trailer. It was hard work, scooping shovel after shovel of grass. My back ached and my hands were getting blisters, but I kept going. Finally, the trailer was full. I headed for the animal dealer. Here is it. He used grass for feeding a lot of his animals. For my first trailer load, I earned $1,000. It wasn't much, but every dollar counted. On the way back for a second load, I had another problem. The trailer hitch wasn't properly secured, and halfway down the road, the trailer came loose. I heard a loud clank and saw the trailer rolling away in my rearview mirror. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out. Fortunately, the trailer had just rolled into the grass at the roadside and hadn't flipped over. I reattached it more carefully this time, making sure the locking pin was properly in place. I almost lost my entire load of grass. Therefore, always check that the equipment is properly secured before traveling. I realized I can use forage trailer, so I bought it for $4,000. A collector goes down into it and collects all the grass from the ground, which it then throws into the body. With this trailer, I can cut more grass and easily collect it. So I start working. I cut a grass. Then collect it by forage trailer, and drove to sell it. And the last trailer. For all grass, I earned $14,000. Between the wood sales, the contract work, and the grass sales, I now had enough money to start thinking about the next phase of restoring this farm. Standing in what was now a cleared farmyard, I looked around at what I had accomplished in just a few days. The overgrown jungle was now an organized workspace. I had a functioning tractor, basic equipment, and most importantly, I had proven that this abandoned farm could be brought back to life. The real work was just beginning. By the way, I bought this mower for $4,000. Now that I had some money and experience, it was time to tackle that first field with the old dried crop. I needed to get this field productive again. For this job, I would need a cultivator to turn over the old crop and prepare the soil. I drove to the equipment dealer. There, I found a used cultivator that would fit my tractor. It cost me $5,000, but it was exactly what I needed. I also needed a seeder to plant new crops. The dealer had a rental seeder available for $400. Perfect! I could rent it for the planting season and return it when finished. I hooked up the cultivator to my tractor and drove to the field with the dried wheat. The old crop was completely brown and brittle from sitting unharvested. I started cultivation, turning the old stalks under the soil. The cultivator worked steadily, preparing neat furrows across the entire field. Once the cultivating was finished, I swapped the cultivator for the rented seeder. I loaded it with canola seeds and began planting. I chose canola because it is quite unpretentious and quite easy to care for. Row after row, I covered the field with fresh seed. This field would give me my first real harvest. Done. The field is sown. Now all that's left to do is wait for the harvest. Now let's go to the farm. While driving back from the field, my phone rang. It was another farmer from down the road. He had heard I was doing contract work and had a proposition. His own seeder had broken down, and he needed someone to plant his field. The timing was perfect. I had the seeder rented for the whole day. He offered to pay $4,000 for the job. I immediately accepted. I drove to his farm and spent the afternoon planting his field with canola. The work went smoothly, and he was very satisfied with the results. He paid me $4,000 in cash and said he'd call me again if he needed more work done. This contract work was becoming a good source of income. Before back at my farm, I returned the seeder to the dealer. Now all I could do was wait for the canola to grow. But I wasn't going to sit idle. I decided to explore more of my property. Walking around the far edge of the farm, I pushed through some thick overgrowth and couldn't believe what I found. Hidden behind years of wild growth was a massive combine harvester. It was old and covered in vines, but it was a real combine. I spent some time clearing away the vegetation that had grown around it. When I finally had it fully exposed, I climbed into the cab, and I got luck. The key is in ignition. I turned the key, but nothing happened. The engine wouldn't even turn over. I popped the engine hood and found the problem immediately. The battery had broken due to long downtime. I needed to get this machine running. It would change everything for my farming operation. I drove to the parts store. There, I found the correct replacement battery. It cost me $250, but it was worth every penny. Back at the farm, I spent the evening installing the new battery. Let's try to start it again. This time, the engine roared to life. I had a working combine harvester. All work good. I hope it will be great for harvesting. As I was testing the combine, I noticed something concerning in my canola field. Small green weeds were starting to sprout between the canola rows. I should have fertilized the field when I planted it. Without fertilizer, the wheat couldn't compete with the weeds. This would definitely reduce my harvest, but there was nothing I could do about it now. I'd have to be more careful next time. Sometime later, the canola was finally ready for harvest. I drove the combine to the field and began my first harvest. The combine worked beautifully, cutting through the canola and separating the grain. But as I'd feared, the weeds had reduced the yield. Still, I was harvesting my own grain. When harvester was full, I took a trailer to unload canola. How beautifully money flows into the trailer. When a trailer was full, I drove to the grain elevator to sell my canola. For my first trailer, I earned $18,000. Very good. And now I'm going to continue working. After a few hours, canola was harvested. And this last trailer. For my first crop, I earned $90. It is very big earning. I felt like a real farmer. The success with my own harvest led to another phone call. The same farmer who had hired me for planting now needed someone to harvest his canola. His combine had also broken down. He offered $7,000 for the job. I was there the next morning. I earned good money. This contract harvesting was proving to be very profitable. I got $7,000. It's very good. I parked the equipment. I also bought a high-pressure washer and washed my harvester. Now, I want to upgrade my equipment. I want a new tractor. I sold my old tractor. I got $6,000 for it. And I bought this one to replace it. It's much bigger and more powerful than the previous one. It also has a lot of different features. It cost me $45,000. With the extra money from contract work, I decided it was time to try making silage. It required building a silage pit, so let's build it. I also filled the paths with gravel. For my first silage, I used the grass from my second field, so let's mow it. After I mowed grass, I need to collect it. I bought windrower for $8,000. This thing makes rows from grass. And then this rows will be convenient to collect by forage trailer. Done. Now I take my forage trailer and collect grass. Then I dump the grass into the silage pit, and several more times. When all grass was collected, I need to press it. I drove the tractor over it repeatedly to pack it down. This is necessary for the grass to release the juice needed for fermentation. Finally, I covered it with a tarp and weighted it down. Now, under the influence of the sun, it will turn into silage, and all I can do is wait. While the silage was fermenting, I decided to add some livestock to the farm. Chickens seemed like a good start. They were cheap and would provide steady income from eggs. I bought a few dozen hens and set up a simple chicken coop near the house. The chickens needed feed, so I got in my pickup truck and drove into town. The farmer's market is just what I need. I bought some chicken feed there for $3,000. I load it up and drive to the farm. And I immediately unload the food for them. Great. Now they will bring me eggs. I hope there will be a lot of them. A month later, the silage was ready. Time to sell it. For delivery, I used the same forage trailer. I loaded it into the trailer and drove to the animal dealer. Silage sold for much more than regular grass. For my first batch, I earned $5,000. That's very good amount. So I went to get the leftovers. I got $40,000 for the whole silo. That's pretty cool. I think silage is a pretty profitable source of income. The chickens were also laying well. That's how many eggs I've already collected. Let's sell them. I get in the pickup truck, I load the eggs. And I take them to the farmer's market. I got almost $7,000 for the eggs. Great. I didn't expect the eggs to be so expensive. Standing in my farmyard one evening, I looked around at what I had accomplished. The abandoned jungle had become a working farm. I had cleared fields, restored old equipment, planted and harvested crops, and even started raising livestock. The farm was not only restored, it was profitable. From an overgrown mess with just a pickup truck, I had built a real farming operation. The old buildings were clean and organized. The fields were productive. I had contracts with other farmers. Most importantly, I was making money and loving every minute of it. This abandoned farm restoration journey showed that with hard work, determination, and a little luck, any farm can be brought back to life. If you enjoyed watching this transformation, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This was Fizbee. See you next time.